Have you ever noticed that just when you've begun to feel peace without him, he reappears not always with words? Sometimes it's a message, a question, a subtle re-entry, but it arrives like a ripple returning to the shore. This moment, though quiet, holds deep lessons. This is not an accident, nor is it fate. It is the nature of energy, of emotion, of the human need to complete what was once open. But before you ask why he came back, ask yourself, who have I become while he was gone? Because in this space of silence you didn't just lose him, you found yourself, and this change in you is what he senses, often before you do. When a man leaves, most people focus on the silence that follows. But silence in itself is not emptiness. It is full of meaning, full of movement, full of energy. What appears to be the absence of words is often the beginning of something far deeper, a return of attention inward, a gathering of emotional power, and the quiet reorientation of your inner self. In this silent gap, something begins to shift, not just in you, but in him. When a connection is disrupted, especially one layered with emotional intensity, the energy between two people doesn't simply vanish. It lingers, and this lingering presence is not mystical. It is rooted in how the human nervous system records emotional experiences. Emotions are not stored in the mind alone. They are stored in the body, in the muscle memory, in the breath, in the heartbeat. This is why, when you suddenly stop communicating, the energy that once flowed freely between you and him begins to collect and gain weight. It forms pressure, not on the outside, but inside, within the nervous system, within memory, within the emotional circuits that are far more sensitive than we often realize. This is the first, and often most misunderstood reason why men return after no contact. Because the energy you used to give, the attention, the care, the emotional presence, is no longer there. When something that once filled a man's emotional environment is no longer accessible, the emptiness left behind becomes deeply noticeable. Not always at once, but it builds gradually. Imagine a man walking into a room where, for weeks or months, there was always warmth. Maybe it wasn't perfect. Maybe there were arguments or misunderstandings, but there was presence. There was life. And then one day, he enters that room, and it's empty, quiet, still. That absence does not feel neutral. It feels strange, disorienting. The emotional system expects the familiar, but finds something else. That is when memory begins to wake up. Energy withdrawn is not energy erased. It is energy remembered. Human beings are deeply sensitive to shifts in emotional availability. Even if they pretend not to care, even if they claim indifference, deep inside, the body reacts. The subconscious notices. This is not about drama. This is not about playing games. It is about understanding emotional imprint. If you touched his life with authenticity, even in small ways, your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. Because when you are no longer actively available, he is forced to face his own silence. This is why withdrawal, when done with inner peace rather than bitterness, becomes a form of spiritual and emotional discipline. It says, I will no longer feed what does not feed me, and in doing so, you become invisible to the parts of him that took you for granted, but more visible than ever to the parts of him that actually felt your worth, even if he never admitted it. Let's pause here and consider a real story. A woman had been in a relationship where she always reached out first. She checked in. She kept things alive. She forgave quickly. She explained when he seemed cold. And over time she felt invisible. Her kindness, instead of being treasured, became background noise, until one day she decided to do something radical, not out of anger, but out of clarity. She went silent. No warning, no dramatic farewell. She simply redirected her energy inward. 3 weeks passed, nothing. Then one morning, a message arrived. Hey, just wondering how you've been. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. What changed? It wasn't the man, it was the energetic field. She had shifted. She had removed her presence from his emotional space, and that absence created a contrast. The mind only appreciates something when it sees it as missing. That is the nature of value, not in abundance but in withdrawal. This is not about manipulation, it's about nature. We do not miss water until we are thirsty. We do not miss peace until we feel chaos. And we do not miss presence until we are faced with emptiness. Now, let's explore why this happens in a deeper psychological and neurological context. The human brain is wired for pattern recognition. We are creatures of rhythm, of expectation. When someone is consistently emotionally available, the brain forms a loop, an expectation that they will continue to be. This pattern becomes subconscious, predictable. And predictability, in the absence of awareness, leads to taking things for granted. Now, when you break that loop, when your energy is no longer flowing towards someone, their system feels a glitch, but not immediately. At first, the absence feels like space, a relief, maybe a freedom, but over time, the lack of emotional nourishment begins to register. The absence becomes a trigger. The pattern is broken, and the brain does not like broken patterns. It tries to restore them. This is why men often return, not necessarily because they've changed, but because their internal emotional system is seeking closure, completion, or reconnection to something familiar that once gave them a sense of emotional home. Let us also reflect on the spiritual dimension of this phenomenon. In Eastern thought, energy is not just physical, it is relational. When you give someone your attention, you are giving them part of your life force, your *chi*, your *prana*, your spirit. And when you withdraw it, it creates an energetic vacuum, not just in their mind, but in their aura. The person feels it. They may not know how to name it, but they feel it. And their return is often an unconscious attempt to feel whole again, not because of love, but because of the comfort your energy once gave them. But now let's look deeper. If a man returns, does it mean he now values you? Not always. Sometimes he simply misses the emotional function you served in his life, the soothing voice, the forgiveness, the steady availability. And when he comes back, what he really wants is to feel that again. Not necessarily *you* as a person, but *you* as an energy source. This is where self-mastery becomes essential, because not every return deserves a welcome. You must ask, has he changed? Or is he just hungry for the energy I no longer offer? And more importantly, have I changed? Or am I still in the same emotional pattern, ready to serve from depletion? You see, silence is not only a message to them, it is a mirror for you, a time to see clearly not who they are, but who you've become. This clarity does not come from distraction, or dating someone new, or posting pictures to show how happy you are. It comes from stillness, from coming home to your own breath, your own boundaries, your own inner garden. One of the most powerful principles in life is this: people value what they feel they might lose, not what they are constantly handed, not what's always waiting. And so, when you choose absence, not from revenge, but from wisdom, you allow the natural process of emotional reflection to take place. Let's move from the spiritual to the emotional brain, the amygdala part of the brain responsible for emotional memory and fear. Plays a major role in relational recall. When you were in his life, your presence became part of his emotional memory network. Certain sounds, smells, locations, even times of day may have been unconsciously linked with your energy. When you leave, and especially when you do so without chaos, these memories become louder. Why? Because memory seeks activation, and if you are not present, the brain begins to fantasize. It fills in the gaps, and in many cases, it begins romanticizing. This is why people often look back and remember only the soft parts of the relationship, the laughs, the shared mornings, the comfort. And this selective memory drives many men to return, not because the relationship was ideal, but because the emotional memories feel safer than the emotional unknown they now face. And yet, here is the quiet truth that few speak. When you disappear with grace, you teach him a silent lesson that will echo long after you've moved on. You teach him that presence is a privilege, that emotional labor is not guaranteed, that love is not entitlement, it is participation. And for some men, this is the very lesson that begins their awakening. For others, it's just a passing discomfort. But either way, your withdrawal becomes a form of teaching. Let me share with you another brief story. A man once said of his former partner, "She was always there for me, no matter how I treated her. I thought she always would be, but then she just stopped. No fight, no explanation, just peace." And then he added something even more telling, "I started missing her after she stopped trying." This is the paradox of energy. When you give too much, it becomes noise. When you pull back, it becomes music. Now, let us transition gently into the second core teaching. If you have ever felt surprised by how deeply someone misses you after no contact, the answer may lie not in romance, but in the workings of the emotional brain. The limbic system, particularly the hippocampus and amygdala, governs not only our emotional responses, but the way we store relational memory. Unlike logic, which fades quickly, emotional memory is sticky. It attaches to tone, to scent, to sensation, to vibration. So even after months of silence, a man may smell something, a perfume you wore, the air after rain, a familiar meal, and without warning, he feels you again. Not just thinks of you, but feels your presence. This is emotional memory in motion, and it is far more powerful than logic. Logic says she wasn't right for me. Emotion says but I miss how I felt when she was around. This conflict is what drives so many men to return, not with certainty, but with curiosity, not with clarity, but with emotional longing. And the danger is, if you have not yet done your inner work, you might confuse his longing with your value. But your value does not rise because they return. It rises because you stayed centered while they were gone. What often keeps us tied to people who left us is not the person themselves, but the emotional signature they left behind. And this signature is not erased by their absence. It is transformed by your inner awareness. So the work is not to stop caring. The work is to stop overfeeding what no longer feeds you, because when a man returns, what he feels is not your words, your pictures, or your status. He feels your energetic signature. And if that has shifted, if it is now rooted, calm, whole, then even his return will not sway you unless he has changed too. You begin to see clearly, his return is not the reward, your transformation is. And it is in this place, this inner sanctuary of self-mastery, that you finally realize some men don't come back because of who you were They come back because of who you've become when they left. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the quiet mastery of energy, and in relationships, this kind of stillness is more powerful than most people can imagine. It is not passive, it is not waiting. It is not pretending to be unaffected. True stillness is an intentional, conscious state of being, where you reclaim what was scattered. You gather your attention back from all the places you've given it, not with bitterness, but with clarity. When you stop chasing, explaining, and reaching, Something subtle but undeniable begins to shift, not just in you, but in the emotional atmosphere between you and the person you once gave so much to. This shift is not loud. It doesn't come with announcements. It doesn't post about itself, but it is felt deeply. When a woman enters stillness, she stops being reactive and becomes radiant. The kind of radiant that isn't about charm or appearance, but about depth, about groundedness. She becomes like water, calm on the surface, but holding tremendous power underneath, and like water, she can no longer be grasped or owned. She can only be approached with respect. In the days following no contact, many assume they must do something to pull someone back. But the most powerful thing you can do is not to act. It is to become still, become whole, become aligned. In stillness, you don't chase validation. You become the mirror. You allow the other to meet their own reflection in your silence. When you no longer offer your energy on demand, the man who once took your presence for granted begins to encounter an emotional gap. This gap is not just a missing message or a delayed reply. It is the space where your energy used to reside. And that space begins to speak louder than your words ever did. There is a quiet magnetism that arises from a woman who has anchored herself. She is no longer reaching for the relationship to complete her. She is not attempting to correct the narrative or prove her worth. She is simply present with herself. This is not detachment from love. It is devotion to truth, to inner order, to emotional balance. Let me offer a simple story. There was a woman who, after a painful breakup, decided not to text, not to call, not to post anything for attention. Instead, she began waking up early to meditate. She took long walks in nature. She drank her tea without scrolling through her phone. She cried when needed, but without shame, and after 3 weeks of stillness, she felt something begin to open. Not in the world, but within her. Her breathing became slower. Her thoughts lost their urgency. She no longer waited for his return. She became the return she had been waiting for. Then one night, as she lit a candle to sit in silence, a message appeared on her screen. Hey, are you okay? I've been thinking about you a lot. A stillness had spoken. Her calm had stirred something in him that her words never could, not because she was trying to draw him back, but because she had finally returned to herself. In Eastern traditions, stillness is the source of all movement, the unmoved mover. When you embody stillness, you don't just stop the noise. You begin to emit a frequency that others can feel, especially those who were once attuned to you. Your stillness acts like a mirror. And in that mirror, the man who left sees himself for the first time, no longer distracted by your attempts to fix or understand him. He now encounters the silence of his own choices. But this silence is not empty. It is alive, and it calls him, not with pleading, but with presence, not with desperation, but with dignity. Psychologically, stillness activates a powerful response known as the curiosity gap. The human brain is wired to seek closure. When someone disappears with noise, shouting, blaming, or begging, the story feels closed. But when someone disappears into stillness, the mind cannot compute. It begins to ask questions. Where did she go? Is she okay? Did she move on? Has she forgotten me? This curiosity becomes a pathway to reflection. Reflection leads to remembering, and remembering, if it's grounded in emotion, leads to longing. This is not manipulation. This is the natural flow of psychological tension meeting emotional energy. Yet the deeper transformation is not what he feels, it's what you become. In stillness, you begin to heal the part of you that always needed to be heard. You stop yelling your worth and start embodying it. You stop performing emotional labor that was never seen. You stop participating in cycles that only drained you. And as you rest in that stillness, you begin to hear something that was buried beneath the noise of the relationship, your own voice, your own rhythm, your own intuition. And from this place you no longer ask, asterisk, will he come back, asterisk, instead you ask, asterisk, am I at peace with who I am, with or without him, asterisk, this peace is power, because men feel energy more than words. And when a woman walks in stillness, she becomes unpredictable, not in a chaotic way, but in a deeply human way. She is no longer a fixture in someone else's story. She has become the author of her own. But what happens next? What draws a man to return even after long periods of no contact is a truth rooted not only in emotion, but in psychology. The mind is not designed to leave things unfinished. We are biologically driven toward resolution. And when a relationship ends abruptly, or without true closure, the brain files it under asterisk open loop asterisk. This open loop doesn't go away. It lingers, waiting for resolution. And the more emotional investment there was, the stronger the loop becomes, especially for those who never fully expressed themselves during the relationship. In the silence, the subconscious mind begins to process what it never had time to feel. Guilt may rise, regret, curiosity, affection, and because the loop is incomplete, the mind begins to wander back, not always with clarity, but with need. This is why so many men return, not necessarily because they are now ready, but because something within them remains unresolved. Something in the connection still echoes, and the only way they know how to answer that echo is by reaching out. Yet this is where discernment becomes critical. Not every return is a renewal. Sometimes it is just the ego seeking relief. Sometimes it is the mind looking to ease its discomfort, not to build something new, but to momentarily feel safe again. A woman grounded in stillness does not respond to every return with open arms. She doesn't block her heart, but she doesn't abandon it either. She pauses, she listens, she asks, asterisk, what pattern is being repeated here? Asterisk, asterisk, and what truth have I learned in the silence? Asterisk, because silence doesn't only reveal the other person. It reveals asterisk you asterisk. It shows you where you have settled, where you have overgiven, where you have clung to potential instead of truth. And if you are paying attention, you will see the return not as a test, but as a mirror, a chance to respond from consciousness, not from old wounds. Let's go further into this with another real example. There was a man who left his partner without much explanation. He said he needed space, he felt suffocated, he wasn't sure what he wanted. The woman, instead of pleading, chose to go quiet. She focused on her healing, she read, she learned, she prayed. She didn't try to be strong. She just allowed herself to be present. Months later, he returned, saying all the words she had once begged to hear. But this time her silence had changed her. She didn't rush to say yes. She asked questions. She noticed patterns. She recognized where his energy still hadn't grown. And gently, without judgment, she said, asterisk, I still care for you, but I am no longer the woman who needs to be chosen by someone who isn't sure. Asterisk, and that is when the real power was revealed, not in his return, but in her transformation. You see, the human mind is also deeply drawn to completion. And this takes us to the fourth principle. Asterisk, the mind returns to unfinished patterns, unfinished love stories, unresolved connections, unanswered questions. Asterisk, and it does this not because it is wise, but because it is wired that way. If something ended abruptly, the brain doesn't file it away neatly. It keeps it active, especially if there were moments of emotional intensity, laughter, intimacy, even conflict. The mind revisits those scenes like a movie without an ending. And so, without closure, a man may find himself circling back, not always with maturity, sometimes just with a question, asterisk what if, asterisk and here's what's important to understand, the asterisk what if asterisk is not always about love. It's often about asterisk identity asterisk. A man might wonder who he was when he was with you. He may return because he misses that version of himself, or because he's seeking relief from the discomfort of ending something before it was understood. But your responsibility is not to relieve his discomfort. It is to remain true to your clarity, because when someone returns out of confusion, and you welcome them out of loneliness, you recreate the same unfinished pattern. And that is not love, it's repetition. True connection only arises when both people have faced their unfinished parts and come back, not for comfort, but for alignment. And so, if you find yourself confronted by the return of someone who once walked away, pause before you respond. Ask yourself, is this a return or a rerun? Am I responding from growth or from habit? Am I whole enough to listen without losing myself? Because some people do not return because they miss you. They return because the silence has made them uncomfortable, and in your stillness, you must be wise enough to see the difference. When you understand this, you stop being impressed by attention. You stop mistaking a message for meaning. You begin to realize that real love is not about who comes back. It's about who never left when you became whole, and that is the quiet revolution that stillness makes possible, a transformation that cannot be faked, forced, or forgotten. The kind of transformation that turns longing into peace and silence into strength. And it is from this place that the next chapter begins, not with noise, but with clarity. Every person carries a vibration, not just in their voice, but in their thoughts, intentions, emotions, and presence. This vibration is not seen, but it is always felt. It flows into every conversation, every decision, every interaction, and in relationships, especially after disconnection. This vibration can be the very thing that determines whether someone is drawn back into your orbit or continues drifting away. When you begin the journey inward, when you stop reaching and start becoming, something happens on a level that is not immediately visible. You don't just change how you speak or behave. You change your frequency, your emotional energy, your sense of self, your inner clarity. This inner shift is what others respond to, whether they understand it or not. Some believe they must do something dramatic to make someone notice their worth. But true recognition does not come from noise. It comes from transformation, quiet, internal, deliberate transformation. When your emotional field changes, even if you haven't said a word, people sense it, especially those who were once deeply connected to you. You may have once felt invisible to a man you loved deeply. You may have spoken clearly, tried endlessly, stayed patiently, and yet your words were unheard. But when you finally turned inward, when you healed, when you chose peace over performance, something unexplainable began to radiate from you. And suddenly, without effort, his attention was drawn back, not because you forced it, but because your energy no longer matched the version of you he left behind. Energy cannot lie. You may pretend to be over someone, but if your inner world is still tied to them, they feel it. Just as when you finally cut the emotional thread. Even without saying goodbye, they often feel that too. A man may not be able to articulate it, but he feels when the energy you once gave him has shifted back to yourself. This is the essence of alignment. When your inner world becomes congruent with your outer actions, your energy becomes unmistakably clear. You are no longer conflicted, no longer leaking energy through uncertainty. You have settled into your own being, and this inner congruence sends out a frequency that either invites people to grow into your space or quietly fall away. Consider the woman who always chased validation. She used to try to be what he wanted. She adapted, compromised, even shrank herself to fit the shape of his comfort, but over time, this cost her too much. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't violent, but it was real. Her peace began to fade, and when she finally stepped away, not in anger, but in awareness, she began to rebuild her center. She started walking more slowly, breathing more deeply, speaking more truthfully. Her life began to align with what she once only dreamed of, and without needing to announce her growth, it was noticed. Months later, the man who once saw her as an option came back with a question in his eyes. Asterisk, you feel different. Asterisk, and he was right. She was no longer seeking him, she was now seated in herself. This is the power of energetic shift. It does not beg, it does not explain, it simply asterisk is asterisk, but to reach this state, one must do the deeper work. It's not about pretending to be okay. It's about facing the emotional residue left behind and alchemizing it, turning pain into presence, longing into purpose, reaction into reflection. And this is not a quick fix. It is a discipline, an art, a practice. Psychologically, this process is backed by the way emotional memory is encoded. When a person makes emotional growth, they not only rewire their own neural pathways, they begin to disrupt the emotional maps that others had formed of them. A man who left believing you were weak or desperate now returns and senses confusion. You don't match the version of you he remembers, and this mismatch forces him to reevaluate, to reflect, to reconsider. In neuroscience, this is known as asterisk prediction error asterisk. When the brain encounters something that defies its previous expectations, it creates a moment of cognitive dissonance. And in that moment, there is space. Space for new thoughts, new behaviors, even new emotions. So when you change your vibration, you do not only change how you see yourself, you change how others remember and relate to you. But this must be asterisk authentic asterisk. You cannot fake alignment. You cannot meditate for 5 minutes and expect miracles. You must embody it, live it, integrate it into every layer of your being. Only then does the energy become stable enough to send a new signal to those around you. Let's reflect on a truth from Eastern teachings. Asterisk, what you do not heal, you repeat. And what you heal, you elevate. Asterisk, many times, a man returns not because he loves you, but because your energy still holds the pattern he is familiar with. If that pattern is one of caretaking, overgiving, or emotional self-betrayal, he will be drawn back to it, not because he sees your worth, but because he craves the comfort of his old emotional playground. But if you've healed, if you've truly aligned, then when he returns, the energy he once relied on to soothe his instability is no longer available. He cannot find the same dynamic, and now he must face himself. This is the invisible boundary that true healing creates. It is not resistance, it is resonance. You simply no longer match the pattern he was part of, and this either pushes him to grow or causes him to leave again. In either case, you remain unmoved, not because you are cold, but because you are clear. The final layer of this understanding lies in the illusion that time alone will heal or clarify things. Many believe that if they just wait long enough, everything will resolve itself. But time does not heal, it only gives space. What matters is what you do with that space. If time passes but no inner reflection occurs, the pattern remains, the wound remains, the confusion remains. Healing comes from awareness, from conscious observation of the self, from understanding the role you played, the emotions you carried, the boundaries you lacked. It comes from owning your part in the dynamic, without blame or shame. From asking, asterisk, what was I trying to receive through this person that I had not yet given myself? Asterisk, this kind of questioning is where transformation begins. Because when you recognize that your longing was not just for the person, but for the asterisk feeling asterisk of being seen, valued, held, you can start giving those things to asterisk yourself asterisk. And when you do, your energy becomes whole. A man may come back to you after no contact, but the real question is, asterisk, who are you when he returns? Asterisk, are you still the woman who waits, or are you the woman who has awakened? Let me offer another story, one quieter but powerful. There was a woman who spent years in a pattern with a man who kept leaving and returning. Each time he promised more. Each time she opened her heart, hoping this time it would be different, and each time the pattern repeated. More silence, more uncertainty, more emotional exhaustion. Eventually, she reached a point of quiet grief, not the dramatic kind, but the deep kind, the kind that signals not loss, but release. She stopped hoping for him to change. She stopped trying to prove her love. And she simply began to nourish herself. She started small, journaling, eating mindfully, spending time with women who supported her growth. And then she began to learn about boundaries, energy, and healing. By the time he returned again, something had shifted. She no longer felt the pull, not because she didn't care, but because she no longer believed that love was enough without alignment. She had filled the space inside her that once ached for him with something greater, her own presence, her own truth. He noticed, he said, "You seem lighter," and she smiled, not because she was proud, but because she finally understood it wasn't about getting him back. It was about getting herself back. This is what happens when time is used consciously, when silence becomes sacred, when space becomes a sanctuary instead of a punishment. You grow, not for them, but for you. And in that growth, you begin to recognize the subtle signs of energy. You feel it when someone speaks from truth or from fear. You sense it when a connection is mutual or manipulative. You begin to honor your intuition more than your longing. And from this place, your standards change, not because you expect more from others, but because you now expect more from yourself. A man who left may return, but when he does, it is your awareness that decides the outcome. Not your need, not your loneliness, not your memories, but your awareness. Have you grown, or have you only waited? Have you healed, or have you simply distracted yourself? Have you aligned with truth? Or are you still hoping he will give you what you haven't yet given to yourself? These are not easy questions, but they are the questions that free you, because the man who returns after no contact is not bringing a solution. He is bringing a reflection of who you were, who you are, and who you are becoming, and the answer to what happens next is not found in his message, his apology, or his promise. It is found in the energy you now carry, the energy that speaks louder than words, the energy that reveals whether you are still waiting for someone to come back to you, or whether you have already come home to yourself. The silence that follows separation is never empty. It is filled with lessons, echoes, and choices that shape the path ahead. When someone leaves, they may believe they are walking away from you, but what they truly leave behind is your energy, your essence, your presence. And when you no longer offer it freely, something stirs in the space where you used to be. The return of a man after no contact is not always a sign of love reborn. Sometimes it is the result of emotional memory, unresolved energy, or the discomfort of unfinished patterns. But the return itself is not the reward. The reward is in who you have become while he was gone. If your energy has shifted, if you have reclaimed your worth, grounded your emotions, and aligned your inner world with peace, then his return is no longer a validation. It is a reflection, and in that reflection you hold the power to choose, not from longing, but from clarity, because real power is not in getting someone back. It is in never abandoning yourself again. And when you become still, when you become whole, when you become present, what is meant for you will never require you to break yourself to keep it. You won't need to chase, convince, or perform. You will simply need to remain aligned. And in that alignment, you will always know the difference between a return born of love and one born of need. This is the quiet strength of becoming not louder, not more perfect, but more aware, more centered, more free.